homeless, starving, dying in the rain with her daughter. That's how he found her. He was worth $3 billion. She was worth nothing to the world. But when he chose her over everything, his family declared war. What she did next, nobody saw it coming. The rain fell like bullets from the angry Seoul sky at exactly 11:47 p.m. when Park Jae-won, the youngest billionaire CEO in South Korea, made the decision that would change his entire life forever. His $3 million Bugatti screeched to a stop in the middle of the empty highway, not because of traffic, not because of an accident, but because of what he saw huddled beneath the overpass bridge, something that made his heart stop beating for exactly 3 seconds. A woman, drenched from head to toe, was using her own body as a shield, covering something small, something precious, something she was willing to die for. Her dark skin glistened under the flickering streetlight, and even from 50 meters away, Jae-won could see she was shaking violently, not from cold, but from the kind of exhaustion that comes from fighting life itself for far too long. But that was not what made him stop. What made Park Jae-won, a man who had not cried since he was 7 years old, feel moisture gathering in his eyes, was what he heard next. A tiny voice, weak and trembling, speaking words that would haunt him for the rest of his existence. "Mommy, are we
Mommy,
going
are
to
we
die
going to
tonight?"
die?
And the
No,
woman's
baby, I
response,
won't let
delivered with a
anything happen
strength
to
that
you.
seemed impossible given her broken state. "No, baby, Mommy promised you we would survive, and Mommy never breaks her promises, even if I have to fight God himself." Jae-won's hand moved to his door handle before his brain could process what he was doing. His $15,000 Italian suit meant nothing. His board meeting in 6 hours meant nothing. The fact that his security team had strictly warned him about stopping anywhere alone at night meant absolutely nothing. Because in that moment, Park Jae-won was not a CEO. He was not a billionaire. He was not the man whose face appeared on the cover of Forbes Asia 3 times in 2 years. He was simply a human being witnessing another human being fighting for survival, and something inside him, something he thought had died the day his mother passed away 15 years ago, suddenly roared back to life. He stepped out of the car. The woman heard his footsteps, and her entire body went rigid with terror. She spun around, positioning herself between the approaching stranger and her child, her fists raised despite the fact that she could barely stand. Her eyes, large and fierce and filled with a mother's primal protection, locked onto his. "Stay back," she warned, her accent carrying an accent that Jae-won recognized as Nigerian. "I have nothing worth stealing, but I swear to you, if you touch my daughter, I will kill you with my bare hands." Jae-won stopped immediately, raising both hands in surrender. The rain was soaking through his suit now, but he did not care. He could not look away from this woman's face, from the fire burning in her eyes, despite the devastating circumstances she was clearly facing. There was something about her, something extraordinary that had nothing to do with physical appearance and everything to do with the spirit radiating from her very soul.
"I'm not here to hurt you," he said softly, speaking in English when he realized Korean might frighten her more. I saw you from my car, you and your daughter, in this rain, and I couldn't drive away." "Why not?" the woman demanded, suspicious. "Everyone else does. Every single person who has walked past us for the last 3 months has driven away, walked away, looked away. Why would you be different?" Jae-won did not have an answer. Or perhaps he had too many answers, all of them tangled inside his chest in a way that made breathing difficult. He looked past the woman briefly and saw the small face peeking from behind her, a little girl who could not be older than 5, with the most beautiful curly hair he had ever seen, now plastered to her small face by the relentless rain. The child was holding something in her tiny hands. Jae-won squinted through the rain and felt his heart shatter into 1,000 pieces when he realized what it was. A small piece of bread, soggy and barely recognizable, that the little girl was trying to protect from the rain because it was probably the only food they had. "What's your name?" Jae-won asked, his voice cracking despite his attempts to keep it steady. The woman's defensive stance did not waver. "Why do you want to know?" "Because I want to help you, and I cannot help someone whose name I do not know." "People don't help people like me. the woman replied bitterly. People look at me and see a homeless African woman with a child, and they assume I am a prostitute or a drug addict or an illegal immigrant here to steal their jobs. They do not see that I have a master's degree in chemical engineering from the University of Lagos. They do not see that I was a senior researcher at a pharmaceutical company before I made the mistake of marrying a man who brought me to this country and then abandoned me when he found someone his family actually approved of. A full Korean woman with the right skin color, someone who fit into his world in a way I never could. She was crying now, though it was impossible to tell where the tears ended and the rain began. "Mommy," the little girl screamed, throwing herself at her mother. "I'm okay, baby," the woman whispered, even though she clearly was not okay, had not been okay for a very long time, and might not never be okay again unless something changed immediately. Jaewon made a decision in that moment, a decision that would create enemies, destroy relationships, and turn his entire carefully constructed world upside down. "My name is Park Jae-won," he said, cradling the sick woman in his arms while her daughter clutched his leg with desperate strength. "And I am going to help you. Not because I want something from you, not because I expect anything in return, but because I looked into your eyes and I saw something I have been searching for my entire life without ever knowing I was searching for it." "What?" the woman asked weakly, her consciousness beginning to fade. "Strength," Jaewon answered simply. "Real strength. The kind that money cannot buy and power cannot manufacture. The kind that makes someone willing to die so their child can eat a piece of soggy bread. I have met presidents and kings and the most powerful people on this planet, and not one of them has shown me the kind of strength I just witnessed in you." The woman's eyes fluttered closed, but before she lost consciousness completely, she whispered 4 words that Jaewon would remember for the rest of his life. "My name is Amara." Amara. The name meant grace in Nigerian, and Jaewon thought it was the most beautiful name he had ever heard. He carried her to his car while her daughter walked beside him, holding onto his jacket with a grip that suggested she would never let go. He placed Amara gently in the back seat, then lifted her daughter in beside her. The little girl immediately curled up against her mother, one small hand pressed against Amara's heart as if checking to make sure it was still beating. "What's your name, little one?" Jaewon asked as he started the car. "Ada," the girl answered, her Korean broken and heavily accented, but understandable. "My daddy is Korean. Mummy tried teach me Korean words so maybe his family like me, but they never want talk to me. They say my skin too dark. They say I not real Korean baby." Jaewon gripped the steering wheel so hard his knuckles turned white. There was a special place in hell for people who made children feel unwanted because of the color of their skin, and he silently vowed that whoever had hurt this precious child would face consequences they never saw coming. "Well, Ada," he said, forcing his voice to remain calm and gentle, "your skin is beautiful, and anyone who says otherwise is simply jealous because they will never glow the way you do." Ada stared at him with wide eyes, as if she was trying to determine whether he was telling the truth or simply being kind. Then slowly, a tiny smile appeared on her face, the first real smile she had probably experienced in months. "You talk funny," she said. "I do?" "Yeah, you talk like nice people in Mommy's storybooks, the princes who save princesses." Jaewon smiled, despite the heaviness in his heart. "Well, tonight I'm going to be a prince who rescues a queen, because that's what your mommy is, Ada. She's a queen, and queens deserve castles, not cold bridges under rainy skies." He drove through the night to the only place he knew Amara would receive the best possible care, his private estate on the outskirts of Seoul. It was a mansion that had 23 rooms, a staff of 15, and absolutely no warmth because Jaewon had never had anyone to share it with. His father had died when he was 7, his mother had worked herself to death to give him opportunities, and by the time he had the money to give her everything she deserved, she was gone. The irony of having everything and having no one was not lost on him. His housekeeper, Mrs. Kim, a woman who had worked for the Park family for 30 years and had known Jaewon since he was a small boy, was waiting at the door when he arrived.
Her eyes widened when she saw him carrying an unconscious woman while a small child clung to his side. Jae-won, what on earth? He interrupted. She needs a doctor, the best doctor, immediately, and the child needs food, warm clothes, and a bed. Can you handle that while I make calls? Mrs. Kim had seen things that would make ordinary people faint, but something about the way Jae-won was looking at this woman, something about the protective stance of his body and the desperation in his voice, told her that this was not an ordinary situation. "Consider it done," she said, taking charge immediately. "Bring her inside. The doctor will be here in 20 minutes.
The next few hours were a blur of activity. The doctor confirmed that Amara had severe pneumonia complicated by malnutrition and exhaustion. She needed immediate treatment and at least 2 weeks of complete rest. Her body had been pushed far beyond its limits, and it was honestly a miracle she was still alive. "If you had found her even 1 day later," the doctor said quietly, "she would not have survived." Jae-won nodded, his jaw tight. 1 day. Amara had been 1 day away from dying under that bridge, and if he had taken a different route home, if he had been looking at his phone instead of the road, if he had been like every other person who drove past human suffering without a second thought, she would be gone. But he had stopped. And now she was lying in his guest bedroom, cleaned and dressed in warm clothes, with her daughter curled up beside her and a team of the best medical professionals in the country monitoring her condition. Jae-won sat in the chair beside her bed all night, watching her breathe, watching Ada's small body rise and fall with each peaceful breath. He did not sleep. He could not sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Amara standing in the rain, raising her fists against a stranger, willing to fight to the death to protect her child. He had never seen anything so beautiful in his entire life. When morning came, Jae-won finally stepped out of the room to deal with the chaos that was awaiting him. His phone had 147 missed calls, mostly from his secretary, his board members, and someone he had been trying to avoid for months, his grandmother. Park Se-yeon was the matriarch of the Park family, a woman who had built their pharmaceutical empire from nothing and ruled it with an iron fist for 50 years before handing control to Jae-won. She was brilliant, ruthless, and utterly convinced that she knew what was best for everyone around her, especially her only grandson. She had been trying to arrange his marriage for the last 5 years. Candidate after candidate had been presented to him, each one more perfectly polished than the last. Daughters of politicians, heiresses of conglomerates, celebrities whose faces could launch marketing campaigns. They were all beautiful, all accomplished, all exactly what a woman in Jae-won's position should be. And Jae-won had rejected every single one of them. "You are 32 years old," his grandmother had lectured him just last month. "You need an heir. You need a wife who understands our world, who comes from the right family, who has the breeding to represent the Park name. When are you going to stop being so stubbornly foolish and accept your responsibilities?" Jae-won had not answered her then. He had not known how to explain that he did not want a wife who was perfect on paper. He wanted someone who made him feel alive, someone who could look at him and see the man beneath the money, the person behind the power. He had almost given up believing such a woman existed. Until last night. Until Amara. His phone rang and he answered without looking at the screen, already knowing who it was. "Grandson?" His grandmother's voice was cold enough to freeze fire. "I have been informed that you missed your board meeting this morning. I have also been informed that you brought a stranger to your home last night, a woman. Would you care to explain yourself?" Jae-won took a deep breath. "Grandmother, I found a woman and her child who were homeless and sick. I brought them here to receive medical care. That is all." Silence on the other end. Then, "That is all? You expect me to believe that is all? Who is this woman? Where does she come from? What is her background?" "Her name is Amara. She is Nigerian. She has a master's degree in chemical engineering. She is a single mother, and she is currently fighting for her life in my guest's bedroom." His grandmother made a sound of disgust. "Nigerian? A foreigner? Have you lost your minds completely?
Get her out of your house immediately. Pay for a hospital if you must play the hero, but do not associate our family name with some random homeless woman from Africa. No. The word hung in the air between them, heavy and absolute. Excuse me? I said no, grandmother. I will not throw her out. I will not abandon her. She stays here until she is fully recovered, and I do not care what anyone thinks about that. You will care, his grandmother said, her voice now carrying a dangerous edge, when I remind you that I still hold 40% of the company's shares. You will care when I tell you that the board is already questioning your judgment, and you will definitely care when I inform you that Kang Min-ji is expecting to have dinner with you this weekend to discuss your engagement. Kang Min-ji. The name made Jae-won's stomach turn. She was the daughter of Kang Sung-ho, the owner of Korea's largest banking conglomerate and his grandmother's longtime friend. Min-ji was beautiful, educated, and utterly cold. She looked at Jae-won the way a collector looks at a rare painting, something to be acquired and displayed, not loved. I never agreed to an engagement with Min-ji. You didn't have to agree. I agreed on your behalf. The paperwork is already being prepared. The announcement will be made next month at the company gala. Jae-won felt the walls closing in around him, the same walls that had been closing in his entire life. He had been fighting against this moment for years, the moment when his grandmother would finally succeed and taking away his freedom completely. I need to go, he said, ending the call before she could respond. He walked back to Amara's room and stood in the doorway, watching her sleep. Even pale and sick, she was stunning. Her features were strong and elegant, her dark skin like velvet against the white pillow. There was something about her face, even in sleep, that spoke of dignity and resilience. She's really pretty, isn't she? Jae-won looked down to see Ada standing beside him, having woken up without him noticing. The little girl was wearing pajamas that Mrs. Kim had somehow produced in the middle of the night, pink ones with small bunnies on them. Yes, Jae-won admitted. She really is. Everyone always tell Mommy she not pretty because she too dark. Daddy family say she look like mud. They say I look like mud too. Jae-won dropped to his knees so he could look Ada directly in the eyes. Listen to me very carefully, Ada. You and your mommy are not mud. You are gold, pure, beautiful gold, and anyone who cannot see that is blind, foolish, and not worth a single tear from your eyes. Ada studied him for a long moment, then she asked a question that caught him completely off guard. Are you going to be my new daddy? Jae-won's heart stopped. He opened his mouth to respond, to say something gentle about how he and her mommy had just met, about how things were complicated, about how the world did not work that way. But before he could speak, a weak voice interrupted from the bed. Ada, that's not an appropriate question. Jae-won looked up to find Amara awake, her dark eyes fixed on him with an expression he could not quite read. She still looked weak, but the fire he had seen in her gaze last night was returning, flickering back to life like embers that refused to die. You're awake, he said, standing up quickly. Where am I? Amara asked, trying to sit up and immediately wincing in pain. What happened? How long have I been unconscious? You're in my home, Jae-won explained, moving closer to help her sit up despite her visible distrust. You collapsed under the bridge. You have severe pneumonia. You've been unconscious for about 8 hours. Amara's eyes darted around the room, taking in the expensive furniture, the silk curtains, the artwork on the walls that probably cost more than she had earned in her entire life. When her gaze returned to Jae-won, it was filled with suspicion. Why? Why what? Why did you bring me here, to your home, not a hospital? What do you want from me? It was a fair question, Jae-won knew. A homeless woman brought to a billionaire's mansion by a man she had never met. It sounded like the beginning of every horror story ever told. He could not blame her for being suspicious. I want nothing from you, he said honestly. The truth is, I don't know exactly why I brought you here. I just knew that I couldn't leave you out there. And I knew that hospitals asked too many questions about things like insurance and immigration status. I thought you would be safer here. Amara's eyes narrowed. How do you know about my immigration status? You told me last night before you passed out. She was quiet for a long moment, clearly trying to remember what she had said. When the memories came back, Jaewon saw shame flood her face, and he hated it. He hated that this brilliant, strong woman had been reduced to a position where she felt ashamed of her own survival. "I should go," she said, pushing the blankets aside despite her obvious weakness. "I can't stay here. This isn't my world. I don't belong in places like this." "You're not going anywhere," Jaewon said firmly. "You can barely stand. Your body needs rest. Your daughter needs stability. And whether you like it or not, I am going to make sure you both get what you need." "I don't need charity." "This isn't charity. This is basic human decency, something that apparently has become so rare that people mistake it for an ulterior motive." Amara stared at him, and Jaewon could see the war happening behind her eyes. Pride versus necessity, fear versus hope, the desperate need to trust someone against the experience of being betrayed by everyone she had ever trusted. "3 days," she finally said. "I'll stay 3 days until I'm strong enough to leave, but that's it. I will not be a burden on anyone." "You're not a burden." "Everyone I love ends up seeing me as a burden eventually. It's only a matter of time before you do too." The words were spoken without self-pity, just the resigned acceptance of someone who had learned the hardest lessons life had to offer. Jaewon wanted to argue, wanted to promise her that he was different, but he knew such promises would mean nothing from a stranger. So instead, he simply said, "We'll see." 3 days turned into 1 week. 1 week turned into 2. Amara's pneumonia was more severe than initially thought, and her recovery was slow. But as her body healed, Jaewon watched something else begin to heal too, her spirit. With rest and proper nutrition, the hollowness left her cheeks. With safety and warmth, the haunted look left her eyes. And with kindness and respect, something Jaewon suspected she had not received in years, she began to smile. And her smile was devastating. It transformed her entire face, lighting it up from within until she practically glowed. The first time Jaewon made her genuinely laugh, telling her about the time he had accidentally worn mismatched shoes to a business meeting and hadn't noticed until he was giving a presentation, he felt like he had won the lottery. Ada, meanwhile, had completely stolen Mrs. Kim's heart. The child followed the housekeeper everywhere, helping with small tasks, learning Korean words and phrases, filling the mansion with the kind of noise and chaos that Jaewon had not realized he was missing until it appeared. "She's going to be heartbroken when you leave," Mrs. Kim told Amara one evening, watching Ada play with the other staff members' children who had been invited over specifically because Jaewon could not stand the thought of Ada being lonely. Amara nodded, her expression sad. "I know, but we can't stay here forever. This isn't our home." "It could be," Mrs. Kim said quietly, and there was something meaningful in her tone that made Amara's head snap up. "What do you mean?" The old woman just smiled mysteriously. "I've known Jaewon since he was a small boy. I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you." Amara shook her head firmly. "That's impossible. He's a billionaire CEO. I'm a homeless single mother with an expired visa and 0 prospects. Even if he did feel something, which he doesn't, nothing could ever happen between us. The world doesn't work that way." "Perhaps," Mrs. Kim conceded, "but then again, the world is full of surprises." That conversation stayed with Amara, lodging itself in her brain and refusing to leave. She began to notice things she had been too sick or too guarded to see before. The way Jaewon always made sure to eat dinner with her and Ada. The way he asked about her research background and actually listened, fascinated, as she explained her work in pharmaceutical development. The way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching, as if she was something precious and miraculous. She noticed, and she began to feel things she had sworn never to feel again. Hope, attraction, and something deeper, something more terrifying, connection. It was crazy, she told herself firmly, absolutely insane to even entertain such thoughts. She had known this man for barely 3 weeks. She had no money, no legal status, no future that she could see. Getting attached to him would only lead to heartbreak. But logic had never been particularly good at controlling the heart, and her heart, traitorous organ that it was, had already started falling. Meanwhile, outside the protective walls of the mansion, forces were gathering, forces that would soon threaten to destroy everything. Jaewon's grandmother had not been idle. When her initial commands had been ignored, she had shifted to a more subtle approach, hiring investigators to discover everything there was to know about the mysterious woman living in her grandson's home. What she found delighted her in the worst possible way. Amara's expired visa meant she could be deported at any moment. Her marriage to a Korean man had ended in abandonment, with her ex-husband now married to his Korean mistress and openly denying that Ada was his biological daughter. There were no resources, no allies, no safety net. In short, Amara was vulnerable, and Park Se-yeon was nothing if not an expert at exploiting vulnerability. The attack came on a sunny Tuesday morning, exactly 23 days after Jaewon had found Amara under that bridge. Amara was in the garden with Ada, teaching her daughter how to plant flowers, when 3 black cars pulled up to the mansion gates. Within minutes, immigration officials were at the door, accompanied by several lawyers and, to Jaewon's absolute fury, his grandmother herself. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded, placing himself between the officials and Amara, who had gone pale with terror. "I am simply ensuring that the law is followed," his grandmother said smoothly. "This woman is in our country illegally. She must be detained and deported. Her child will be placed in temporary custody until the father can be located." "No!" Amara screamed, grabbing Ada and backing away. "You can't take my daughter. She's everything I have." The immigration officials looked uncomfortable, but determined. They had a job to do, and powerful people had given them very specific instructions. "Ma'am, please cooperate. This will be easier for everyone." "I will not cooperate with separating a mother from her child," Jaewon said, his voice carrying the steel that had made him feared in boardrooms across Asia. "You will leave my property immediately." "Mr. Park," one of the lawyers spoke up, "with respect, you cannot obstruct a legal immigration action. If you interfere, you could be charged with harboring an illegal immigrant." "Then charge me," Jaewon shot back. "Charge me, arrest me, do whatever you need to do, but you will not take this woman and her daughter from my home." His grandmother stepped forward, her smile cold and calculated. "Jaewon, stop being dramatic. This has nothing to do with you. This woman is a stranger who has been taking advantage of your kindness. Let the authorities do their job." "She is not a stranger." The words exploded out of Jaewon with a force that surprised everyone, including himself. Amara was staring at him too, her eyes huge and glistening with tears, holding holding Ada, protectively against her chest. In that moment, Jaewon understood something with perfect clarity. He understood what he wanted, what he needed, what he had been searching for his entire, lonely, successful, empty life. He wanted this family, this woman and this child who had stumbled into his world and filled every hollow space he hadn't even known existed. "She is the woman I am going to marry," he said. Silence. Complete, absolute silence. His grandmother's face went through several colors before settling on an ugly shade of purple. "You cannot be serious." "I have never been more serious about anything in my life." He turned to Amara, who was staring at him with an expression of complete shock. "I know this is sudden," he said, speaking quickly because he knew he might not get another chance. "I know we barely know each other. I know there are 1,000 reasons why this is crazy and impossible and makes no sense. But I also know that from the moment I saw you standing in that rain, willing to fight the world for your daughter, I have not been able to stop thinking about you. I know that every day I spend with you and Ada is the happiest day I have ever lived. And I know that if I let them take you away from me, I will regret it for the rest of my life." He took a step toward her, ignoring the officials, ignoring his grandmother, ignoring everything except the woman in front of him. "Amara, I'm not asking you to love me. I'm not even asking you to stay forever. I'm asking you to let me protect you, to let me give you and Ada a chance at the life you deserve. Marry me, and they can't touch you. Marry me, and I will spend every single day proving to you that this isn't a mistake." Amara was crying now, tears streaming down her beautiful face. You don't know what you're saying. Your grandmother, your company, your reputation. You would lose everything. I would gain everything, he corrected her softly, because everything I want is standing right in front of me. This is absurd, his grandmother shrieked. I will not allow this. The board will never approve. I will remove you as CEO. Jaewon turned to face her, and something in his expression made her take a step back despite herself. Go ahead, he said quietly. Remove me. Take the company. I don't care anymore. I have spent my entire life doing what you wanted, being who you expected me to be, sacrificing everything personal for the sake of the family name. But not this. This is mine. She is mine, and I will not let you take her from me. The officials exchanged nervous glances. This was supposed to be a simple deportation, not a dramatic confrontation between one of Korea's richest families. Mr. Park, the lead official said carefully, if you and this woman are truly planning to marry, we would need evidence of a genuine relationship. Immigration fraud is a serious crime. There is no fraud, Jaewon said firmly. Postpone your action for 6 months. If we are not married by then, you can proceed. But I am telling you now, with everyone here as my witness, that Amara will be my wife before those 6 months are over. The official looked at his colleagues, then at the furious grandmother, then at the determined CEO. He made a decision. 6 months, he agreed, but we will be monitoring the situation closely. As quickly as they had appeared, the officials and lawyers withdrew. Only Jaewon's grandmother remained, her face a mask of barely controlled rage. You have made a terrible mistake, she hissed at her grandson. That woman has bewitched you somehow. She is after your money, your status, and when she has what she wants, she will leave you destroyed. Grandmother, Jaewon replied calmly, Amara had no idea who I was when I found her. She didn't know I was rich, didn't know I was a CEO, didn't know anything about me except that I was a stranger in the rain who offered to help. If she had wanted to manipulate me, she had every opportunity. Instead, she tried to leave multiple times because she didn't want to be a burden. That is not the behavior of someone after my money. Her grandmother's eyes narrowed. She is good, I'll give her that. Very good. But you will see the truth eventually, and when you do, don't come crying to me. She swept out of the mansion without another word, and finally, Jaewon and Amara were alone except for Ada, who had watched the entire confrontation with wide, confused eyes. Did that man really ask you to marry my mommy? Are you going to be my daddy now? Amara started crying harder, overwhelmed by everything that had just happened. Jaewon moved to her, hesitant at first, then pulling her into his arms when she didn't resist. She collapsed against his chest, sobbing, her body shaking with the release of fear and hope and emotions too complicated to name. You didn't have to do that, she choked out. You didn't have to sacrifice everything for me. I didn't sacrifice anything, he murmured into her hair. I finally found something worth fighting for. I know this is sudden, he said, speaking quickly because he knew he might not get another chance. I know we barely know each other. I know there are 1,000 reasons why this is crazy and impossible and makes no sense. But I also know that from the moment I saw you standing in that rain, willing to fight the world for your daughter, I have not been able to stop thinking about you. I know that every day I spend with you and Ada is the happiest day I have ever lived. And I know that if I let them take you away from me, I will regret it for the rest of my life. He took a step toward her, ignoring the officials, ignoring his grandmother, ignoring everything except the woman in front of him. Amara, I'm not asking you to love me. I'm not even asking you to stay forever. I'm asking you to let me protect you, to let me give you and Ada a chance at the life you deserve. Marry me, and they can't touch you. Marry me, and I will spend every single day proving to you that this isn't a mistake. Amara was crying now, tears streaming down her beautiful face. You don't know what you're saying. Your grandmother, your company, your reputation. You would lose everything. I would gain everything, he corrected her softly, because everything I want is standing right in front of me. They stood there for a long time, holding each other, while Ada wrapped her small arms around both their legs, completing the circle. But their trials were far from over. In the weeks that followed, Jaewon's grandmother launched a full-scale campaign to destroy Amara. Stories appeared in the media about the foreign gold digger who had seduced Korea's most eligible bachelor. Photos were published showing Amara at her worst, clearly taken from surveillance footage at the homeless shelter she had stayed at briefly before ending up under the bridge. The comments were brutal. "She's just using him for citizenship. What is wrong with Korean women that he has to find a homeless African? This is disgusting. She probably has diseases. Their children will be so ugly." Amara tried to hide her pain from Jaewon, but he saw it. He saw her flinch every time she accidentally glimpsed a headline. He saw her cry when she thought no one was watching. He saw her begin to pull away, convinced that she was ruining his life just by existing. "Maybe your grandmother is right," she said one night, her voice hollow. "Maybe I should just go. You could find someone suitable, someone who won't destroy everything you've built." Jaewon gripped her shoulders, forcing her to look at him. "Listen to me carefully. I do not want someone suitable. I want you, only you. And I don't care if I have to fight my grandmother, the media, and the entire country. I will not let you go." "Why?" Amara whispered. "Why do you care so much? You barely know me." It was a question Jaewon had been asking himself for weeks, and finally he had an answer. "Because when I look at you," he said slowly, "I see the person I want to become. You have survived things that would have destroyed most people. You have maintained your dignity, your kindness, your love for your daughter, despite being broken down again and again. You are the strongest person I have ever met, and being near you makes me want to be stronger too." He lifted her chin gently, making sure she was meeting his eyes. "I love you, Amara. Not because I saved you that night, but because every moment since then, you have been saving me. From my loneliness, from my emptiness, from a life that looked perfect on the outside but was hollow on the inside. You filled me up, you and Ada, and I cannot imagine going back to the person I was before I knew you." Amara stared at him, searching his face for any hint of deception, any sign that this was too good to be true, but all she saw was sincerity, vulnerability, and a love that matched the one growing in her own heart. "I'm scared. I've been hurt before. I don't know if I can survive being hurt again." "I will never hurt you," Jaewon promised, "and anyone who tries to hurt you will have to go through me first." She kissed him then, their first real kiss, soft and tentative and perfect. When they pulled apart, both of them were crying. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes? I'll marry you, not because of the immigration issues, not because I need protection, but because I love you too. I think I've loved you since the moment you stepped out of that ridiculous car in the middle of the rain, ruining your expensive suit to help a stranger." Jaewon laughed through his tears. "That was a very expensive suit. I'll buy you a new one someday. I'll hold you to that." The months leading to the wedding were filled with both joy and challenges, but there were still battles to be fought. Kang Min-ji, the woman Jaewon's grandmother had chosen for him, did not take rejection well. She had been counting on becoming Mrs. Park, on accessing the power and prestige that came with the name. Being passed over for a homeless African immigrant was an insult she could not forgive. She made her move at a charity gala, approaching Amara while Jaewon was occupied with business contacts. "So, you're the woman who stole my fiancé," Minji said, her voice dripping with poisonous sweetness. "I have to admit, I'm impressed. I didn't think Jaewon had a thing for charity cases." Amara's spine straightened. 3 months ago, she might have cowered before someone like Minji, but months of love, security, and remembering her own worth had changed her. "I didn't steal anyone," she replied calmly. "You can't steal someone who was never yours." "He would have been mine eventually. Everyone knows we were perfect together. Same social class, same background, same world. You don't belong here. Everyone can see it." Amara smiled, and it was not a kind smile. "Let me tell you something about belonging, Miss Kang. I have a master's degree in chemical engineering. I speak 4 languages fluently. I have published research that is still being cited in pharmaceutical journals around the world. Before my life fell apart, I was on track to become one of the leading researchers in my field. She stepped closer to Minji, lowering her voice. You, on the other hand, are famous for being your father's daughter. You have never worked a day in your life, never accomplished anything on your own merit, never contributed anything of value to the world. So please, tell me again who doesn't belong. Minji's face turned red with fury. You think because Jaewon is protecting you now, you're safe? His grandmother will never accept you. The board will never accept you. Eventually, the pressure will become too much, and he will realize that marrying you was the biggest mistake of his life. Maybe, Amara conceded, or maybe he'll realize that marrying me was the best decision he ever made. Either way, that's for him to decide, not you. She turned and walked away, leaving Minji sputtering with impotent rage. Across the room, Jaewon had been watching the entire exchange. He had started moving toward them when Minji first approached, ready to intervene, but something had stopped him, some instinct that told Amara needed to fight this battle herself. And she had, magnificently. He had never been more in love with her than in that moment. He intercepted her as she walked away from Minji, pulling her into his arms, right there in the middle of the gala, in front of everyone, including his furious grandmother. That was incredible, he murmured. I may have been too harsh, though she didn't sound particularly sorry. You were perfect. They danced together for the rest of the night, ignoring the whispers and stares, lost in their own world. And somewhere during that night, the public opinion began to shift. People who had been ready to believe the worst about Amara started to see her differently. They saw a woman who carried herself with dignity, who looked at the billionaire CEO not with greed, but with genuine affection, who had clearly won his heart through something more than manipulation. The positive comments began to outweigh the negative. They actually look really happy together. She's beautiful and smart, apparently. Did you hear about her research background? Maybe we were wrong about her. Their love story is like something out of a movie. But the final battle was yet to come. 1 month before the wedding, Amara's ex-husband appeared. His name was Choi Daniel, and he had the audacity to show up at the mansion with a team of lawyers, claiming parental rights to Ada. The child is biologically mine, he announced smugly. I want custody. Amara went white with terror. This was her worst nightmare, the thing she had feared most during all those months on the streets. Losing Ada was not something she could survive. But Jaewon was already there, placing himself between Daniel and Amara, his face carved from ice. You abandoned your wife and daughter, he said quietly, his voice carrying a threat that made Daniel's lawyers shift nervously. You deliberately let her visa expire to force her deportation. You denied that Ada was your child to your own family. And now you come here claiming custody? On what grounds? Daniel's smug smile faltered slightly. I'm the biological father. That gives me rights. You have no rights, Jaewon replied. You forfeited every right the moment you left your wife and daughter to die on the streets. But by all means, take us to court. I'm sure the judge will be very interested to hear how a pharmaceutical executive abandoned his family and left a small child homeless for 3 years. He stepped closer to Daniel, and there was something in his eyes that made the other man take a step back. And when the court case is over and you've been publicly humiliated and stripped of whatever reputation you have left, I will destroy you professionally. I will make sure no company in this country or any country that does business with Park Industries ever hires you again. Your career will be over. Your social standing will be over. Everything you sacrificed your family for will be gone. Daniel's lawyers were already gathering their things, clearly recognizing a losing battle. You can't threaten me, blustered Daniel, though his voice shook. I'm not threatening you. I'm making a promise. Leave now, sign away your parental rights completely, and you can continue your pathetic life in peace. Stay, fight, and I will dedicate every resource at my disposal to destroying you. It took Daniel exactly 30 seconds to make his decision. He signed the papers that same day. When he was gone, Amara collapsed into Jaewon's arms, shaking with relief and residual terror. "He's gone?" Amara asked, barely able to believe it. "He's really gone. He can never take Ada from me?" "He's gone," Jaewon confirmed. "And once we're married, I'm going to legally adopt Ada. No one will ever be able to threaten to take her from us again." "Us? She's my daughter now, too," he said simply. "She has been since the moment she grabbed my jacket and refused to let go." Amara cried. She cried for the years of fear that were finally ending. She cried for the love she had found in the most unexpected place. She cried for her daughter who would finally have the father she deserved. And she cried for herself, for the woman who had nearly given up under that bridge, who was one day away from death when a stranger stopped his car and changed everything. The wedding was held on a beautiful spring day, exactly 6 months after the night Jaewon had found Amara in the rain, just as he had promised. Despite his grandmother's predictions of disaster, the event was attended by hundreds of people, including business leaders, celebrities, and dignitaries from both Korea and Nigeria. Amara's family, who had managed to obtain emergency visas thanks to Jaewon's connections, flew in to watch their daughter marry the man who had saved her life. Amara's mother cried when she saw her daughter walk down the aisle, radiant in a custom gown that incorporated elements of both Korean and Nigerian wedding traditions. Her father shook Jaewon's hand so hard that the CEO winced, but the smile on the older man's face made the pain worth it. Ada served as the flower girl, scattering petals with the enthusiasm of someone who had been practicing for weeks. When she reached the altar, she looked up at Jaewon and asked loudly enough for everyone to hear, "After this, are you officially my daddy?" The entire audience laughed, and Jaewon knelt down to her level. "Officially, legally, and forever," he confirmed. "Promise?" "Promise." Ada nodded seriously, then took her place beside her mother as if she had been satisfied with his answer, and the ceremony could now proceed. Even Jaewon's grandmother attended, though she sat in the back with an expression of severe disapproval. But something shifted in her face during the ceremony when she watched her grandson speak his vows with tears streaming down his face and joy radiating from every pore. She had never seen him look like this. She had never seen him happy. Perhaps, she thought grudgingly, she had been wrong about this woman. Perhaps. After the ceremony, Jaewon gave a speech that would be talked about for years afterward. "When I found Amara," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "I thought I was saving her. I thought I was being generous, charitable, kind. But the truth is, she saved me. She saved me from a life that looked successful on the outside but was empty on the inside. She showed me what real strength looks like, what real love looks like, what really matters in this world." He turned to look at his bride, who was crying and smiling simultaneously. "I have companies and money and power, but none of it means anything without someone to share it with. Amara, you are my partner, my best friend, my heart, and I promise you, in front of everyone here, that I will spend every day of the rest of my life being worthy of the gift you have given me." The applause was thunderous, but the speech wasn't over. "There's one more thing," Jaewon continued. "I want to use this moment to make an announcement. Park Industries is establishing a new foundation funded with 2 billion won, dedicated to helping homeless single mothers and their children. The foundation will provide housing, job training, legal assistance, childcare, and anything else needed to give these families a second chance." He paused, his eyes finding Amara's. "It will be called the Amara Foundation, because if I had not found Amara that night, I would never have understood how many people are out there, just like her, fighting impossible battles alone. This foundation is my commitment to making sure that fewer people have to fight alone and that more people get the second chances they deserve." Amara was crying so hard she could barely stand. But they were good tears, the best tears, tears of joy and gratitude and overwhelming love. The first year of their marriage was not without challenges. There were still people who disapproved, still tabloids that tried to cause trouble, still moments when the cultural differences between them caused misunderstandings, but they faced everything together, learning and growing and building something stronger with each passing day. Jaewon's grandmother, against everyone's expectations, eventually came around. It happened slowly, in small moments. The first time she held Ada on her lap and the child told her she was pretty for an old person. The first time she saw Amara handle a hostile board member with grace and intelligence. The first time she watched her grandson laugh, really laugh, and realized she had never heard that sound before. "I was wrong," she told Jaewon one day, the words clearly difficult for her to say. "About Amara, about what you needed. I was wrong." "Does this mean you accept her?" Jaewon asked cautiously. "It means I'm trying to. It means I'm sorry for the things I said and the things I did. It means I want to know her better, if she will let me." Amara did let her, because beneath her strength, she had a capacity for forgiveness that Jaewon found remarkable. She and the old woman would never be best friends, but they reached an understanding, a respect, eventually even a cautious affection. The Amara Foundation exceeded all expectations. Within its first year, it helped over 300 families find stable housing and employment. Amara herself became heavily involved, using her education and experience to create programs that actually worked, that understood the real needs of people in desperate situations. She also returned to research, accepting a position at Park Industries' pharmaceutical division. Her work on affordable medications for developing countries would eventually earn her international recognition, but more importantly, it gave her purpose, the chance to use her gifts again after years of having them wasted. Ada thrived. She started school, made friends, learned to be a child again instead of a small adult carrying burdens no child should carry. She called Jaewon Appa, and he never got tired of hearing it. Her Korean improved rapidly now that she was surrounded by the language, though she kept her charming accent that made everyone smile. And on a rainy night, exactly 2 years after Jaewon had first found them under that bridge, Amara told him she was pregnant. They stood together at the window, watching the rain fall, remembering everything they had been through to reach this moment. "Are you happy?" Amara asked softly. Jaewon pulled her close, one hand resting on her still flat stomach where their child was growing. "I am the happiest man in the world because I stopped my car on a rainy night and found the love of my life waiting for me under a bridge." "You found us," Amara corrected. "You found me," Jaewon countered. "I was lost before you. I just didn't know it yet." They stayed there for a long time, watching the rain, holding each other, grateful for the impossible series of events that had brought them together. A billionaire CEO who had everything except someone to share it with. A homeless single mother who had nothing except a daughter to fight for. A rainy night that changed everything. Some people believe in fate. Some people believe in luck. Some people believe that the universe has a plan that we cannot understand. But Amara and Jaewon believed in something simpler. They believed in stopping. In a world full of people who drive past suffering, who look away from pain, who tell themselves that someone else will help, they believed in the power of one person choosing to stop. Because that single choice, that moment of compassion, had created a family. And that family, against all odds, was living proof that love could conquer everything. Even hate, even prejudice, even the impossible distance between a cardboard bed under a rainy bridge and a mansion filled with everything money could buy. All it took was one person willing to stop, one person willing to see, one person willing to care. The rest, as they say, was history. But it was their history, and they were still writing it, together, still choosing each other, still proving every single day that love was not about where you started, but who stayed when the world gave you every reason to walk away. Because sometimes the greatest miracles don't begin in palaces. They begin under bridges, in the rain, in the moment one person decides not to look away. If this story touched your heart, let me know in the comments what part stayed with you the most. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more powerful stories like this, because somewhere out there, another story is waiting to be told, and you won't want to miss it.